Geraumt, the podcast for design, information, and in general environmental graphic design. My name is Christian Lunger. I'm a service designer and information designer. And today I'd say I have a very inspiring interview partner whose book I've read. His name is Tristan Gooley. He's a natural navigator and a New York Times bestselling author. And he got the nickname, that's what I read from your website, the Sherlock Holmes of nature. And he was an expeditions leader. From my point of view, he's like an adventurer as well. And he has written lots of books about how to read nature, how to read water. And one of his upcoming books will be The Secret World of Weather. So how to read the science in nature about weather. And for me, as an information designer and service designer, this talk is very, very interesting because most of my professional life, I'm all about designing clues to actually know where you are, to find your way. And now I'm able to talk to somebody who is actually taking the natural clues, interpreting them and knowing where he is and where he has to go and what will happen maybe in a couple of hours' time if we're talking about weather. So Tristan, I thank you very much for your time that you're providing us, and I'm looking forward to our talk. And my first question is, how did you develop this kind of passion in your life?
Hi, Christian. Thanks for inviting me onto your podcast. My whole work now is revolves around quite a simple philosophy, which is that every single thing that we see or sense outdoors is a clue and is a sign. But how I came to that sort of strange line of work is it's a bit of a journey. As a kid, I used to really enjoy putting small journeys together. So I'd see a small hill and say, "Mum, can I go up that hill?" And I'd see a pond and say, "Can I cross the pond in this little boat?" And all that happened was the hills became mountains and the ponds became lakes and then oceans. And I discovered this wonderful art and science of navigation. I realized that navigation is the thing that allows us to shape our own journeys. I often say, on every single journey we do in our life, we are either a navigator or a passenger. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with being a passenger. But it is really exciting sometimes to say, do you know what? On this journey, whether it is 1 kilometer or 1,000 kilometers, I'm going to be the navigator. In fact, every time we get out of bed in the morning and decide, how we're getting to the bathroom, we are the navigator. So I developed some skills in navigation, and I took on some journeys, and the journeys grew really, really big. I was crossing oceans solo in small boats and small aircraft, and I won't take you through every single one of them. We can come back to them if you want to, but what happened was the journeys grew quite big and adventurous and challenging. They got more ambitious, a little bit scarier. But the one thing they didn't get is more interesting. So as a 10-year-old, I was having a more intellectually satisfying and philosophically challenging time working out how I'd get to the top of the hill than I was as a 25-year-old or a 30-year-old, going up big mountains or crossing big oceans. And I thought, this isn't right. So in my 20s, I started a parallel interest, which was much smaller journeys, just using nature as my map and compass. And I started to realize, okay, well, the sun is due south in the middle of the day and we can use the North Star. Okay, this is good stuff. What other techniques are there? And this started about probably 22, 23 years ago. I started collecting them. Mm-hmm. And now I've reached the point where literally everything is a clue or a sign. And I mean literally everything. So I'm very happy for you to pick something entirely at random. And I will sort of show you. I can't promise you I'll give you a mind-blowing sign, but I can show you how I think and how I might turn that into a sign. So that's kind of how I got to where I am now.
Mm-hmm. Since I've, for example, that's one thing I really liked when, for example, going to your website, the Natural Navigator, or you're sending me the newsletter now with all the little tips and questions you're sending out. And for some of them, you actually look at the picture. And you always asking these questions in which direction you're looking, and you look at it, and very often, at least that's what I experienced, it's like a wow effect. If at first you look at the picture and you realize I don't know in which direction I'm looking. And then you get your answer. You start to rethinking all your own experiences. That's what I like, not only about the newsletter or your website that you're providing, but as well as the books. You developed so many different stories. You collected stories from all over the world, from different peoples, from your journeys. And like as a storyteller, you combine the navigation with from my point of view, with a kind of a holistic experience. So if you look at all these experiences that you've collected, what would you say, what was one of the most inspiring ones for you, be it as a kid or as an adult in your later career?
Thanks. Yes, in my 20s, I undertook a walk across, it was less than 2 kilometers of English countryside. And I had a map and a compass in my backpack. And I just said, okay, I'm just not going to refer to them. I'm just going to use the trees. It was quite a cloudy day, so I only used the sun once or twice. I can use the trees, the wildflowers, the wind and the clouds, and I'm just going to try and cross this bit of countryside. And it really was quite an explosion in the synapses in my brain, because I got that incredible tingling sensation. It was like kind of Christmas as a child. It was a really, really magical feeling. And that's really continued. And the thing that's so exciting for me is that I don't have to, and nobody has to take on really big journeys to get this feeling. You have to just solve the puzzle that's in front of you. So as you mentioned kindly in my newsletter, I use a photo, and a photo is just a fast way in. Of course, we can say which way we're looking: north, south, east, west. Sometimes I set a different puzzle, which is, what is the clue in this picture? And the human brain absolutely loves solving puzzles because it's completing a pattern. Psychologists have proven that if you give people 2/3 of a pattern, the brain just gets this sort of fun itch that it has to scratch, which is, I need to fill in the missing piece. And I discovered all this, for myself personally, which is that, okay, I'm here, I need to get there. That's half a pattern. The rest of the pattern is, oh, I'm walking towards a town. That cloud over there is most likely to be over the town, because the town is warming up in the sunlight, and that is creating a cloud over the top of the town. So at that point, I've completed one small pattern. And it's a wonderful subject, because what starts as a physical, pragmatic type of skill can move as much towards the philosophical as you want it to. You can keep it practical if all you want to do is go on journeys or that. But for a lot of people, it starts practical, and quite quickly it becomes it's like playing chess with the universe. It's such fun.
Mhm. That already was one of the clues. I've never heard about that before. But if you listen to it, it feels very logical, and it is. So that warmer heat from a village is actually getting up, and that creates a cloud over the village. I mean, that's the kind of clues you could actually look at when walking. Other clues that I really have to say to myself, like normal people like me who don't have your vast experience, that things they can discover outdoors, especially now in those times. Now it's COVID, people get more outside, they discover nature anew sometimes. And so for them, I think it's not only great to get some navigational experience to find their way, but as well to see all these stories actually that are out there. Because for me personally, that was one of the great things when reading your books as well. It's just this richness of stories that are out there and that can be discovered, like the background stories of why there is a cloud over the village. Are there any other things that would be easy to discover for somebody going outdoors at the moment?
Yes, absolutely. And stories is a good word. Stories is how we convey information in a fast, powerful way to each other when we need to send a message to sometimes the next generation. So, if I give you some actual examples, but underneath each example, what I'd encourage listeners to do is don't think there are maybe 24 or 2,000 clues out there. The truth is, everything is a clue. So when I list them, I'm just giving examples of a much bigger, richer area. So we can say that the big philosophy is nothing is random. So when we see the sun, we can say to ourselves, okay, maybe it rises in the east, it moves through south when it's highest in the sky and it sets in the west. But where it rises changes a huge amount, near 90 degrees in northern temperate zones, near northeast in midsummer and near southeast in midwinter. Then the moon, there are some really rich, fascinating, and quite challenging ways of using it in natural navigation. But the fun one is, if you see a crescent moon, it is pointing towards the sun because the moon emits no light of its own. So we can use the moon to say the sun is this way or that way, and the sun will always be east or west of the moon because they both rise and set east or west of each other. And if we draw a line that touches the horns of the crescent moon and extend that line down to the ground, we'll be looking roughly south. So the explanation there is quite complex, but the method is really simple. You see
it's
a crescent.
Always south.
Well, it's always approximately south, and everything in that everything in natural navigation it's a question of levels. So that's a very fast approximate method, and probably 90% of the time it'll get you within 20 degrees of south. If you the higher the crescent is, the more accurate it is. When it's close to rising or setting, it becomes more approximate, but it won't point north for you. And then if we think of, we've mentioned every single cloud, again, instead of sort of thinking, oh, there are 3 clouds over there, but none over there, we should be thinking, why are they over there and not over there? Because nothing is random. Absolutely nothing is random. So if we see cumulus clouds, the ones that bubble up, the ones that sort of you see at the beginning of The Simpsons and other cartoons, all they are saying with absolute certainty is there's a patch of the Earth's surface that's a bit warmer than one nearby, because that's telling us there's a thermal there. And the reasons
I like how you're using a modern means of getting a relation, like as you see in The Simpsons at the beginning, to actually adopt to an audience. I like that.
Cheers. Yes. And it is sometimes my job to bridge that gap between the modern experience and the ancient one. But we get, as we've mentioned, we get clouds over villages, but you get them over dark coniferous woodland. You get them over hillsides. You get them over islands. So the Pacific Island navigators could they'd find it amazing that we need to see land to tell that there's an island there. They do it from the clouds and the birds, but we could do those same things. We can use birds today. The way birds behave when you're near the coast can tell you what the tide is doing. They can tell you whether you're getting near a town. Certain species become much, much more common when you get near towns. So if we maybe spend a bit of time thinking about towns, because so many of us spend so much time in them, again, there are some very simple, powerful clues. So whatever town you're in the world, have a look at the TV satellite dishes, because there will be a trend there. It's slightly different in each part of the world because it depends which satellite is the dominant one for broadcasters. In the UK, most TV satellite dishes point close to southeast, but in your part of the world, wherever you're listening to this, just have a look. There'll be a trend, and you can use that. But that's quite sort of mechanical, what I might call quite dry. Much richer, more like stories, is take the view that every single person you see in a town is trying to tell you something. So to give you one slightly random example, if you're really lost in a town, it's very common to want to ask a stranger questions. How do I find the bus station? And what we've all had that experience. You go up to somebody and say, "Excuse me, can you tell me where the bus station is?" And they take 5 minutes to tell you that they have no idea. But all you have to do is watch how they cross the road, because that's the clue to how well they know a place. Strangers to a town, people who are visitors, will pause for a long time on the pavement before they cross. People who know a town or a village cross very confidently because they know the flow, they know the rhythm. So you wait till you find a person who doesn't hesitate on the pavement before crossing, ask them and they'll tell you where the bus station is. But we can combine two things there. So the Pacific Islanders could use the way birds move away from land to the sea in the morning and then back from sea towards land in the afternoon. We can do the same in a town. Now we're, hopefully going to get some normality back in terms of our travel patterns fairly soon. If you go against the flow of people, if there's a crowd of people moving early in the morning, go against that flow and you'll find the bus station or the train station. If you go with the flow late in the afternoon, you find the same thing, a transport hub. So that's what I encourage people to do. Just if you're feeling a bit lost, you can use a smartphone, but before you do that, just say, I wonder if the answer is out there in this what I sometimes call visual noise. Do you know that expression?
Yes.
Yeah. When there's just too much data coming in through our eyes and our brain kind of goes, oh, I can't be bothered. Just sort of pick one or two things and just go, what are you telling me? If I've had people come up to me on the street and say, where's the river? And and I'm sort of saying, you know, I've never set foot on this street before, but I think downhill's a good bet. The information is often there. It's hidden in the visual noise, but it's nearly always there.
In your book, How to Read Nature, you're writing about awaken your senses to the outdoors. We talked about the visual sense now. Do you have any examples, for the other senses, be it smell or hearing, that delivers clue in this kind of environment, be it natural or urban environment, on to locate actually where you are, or maybe even the direction, north, east, south?
Yes, absolutely. Quite a lot of natural navigation involves forming a relationship with the wind. So we can't wake up in the morning and say, before we've opened our eyes or got out of bed, we don't necessarily know which way the wind's going. But the second you look out of a window or step outside, you can start to say, okay, maybe we've got this sort of wind. And everywhere in the world will have its prevailing wind patterns. Over large parts of northwestern Europe, the wind comes from the southwest more than other directions. But each person and each place has its patterns. And once you spot them, and then what's quite interesting is you can pair things like smells with wind direction. So wherever you call home, there will be a normal, typical type of smell on a normal day, and that will be the smell in the direction that your prevailing wind, the most common wind direction, comes from. If you notice the wind direction, if you notice the smell change, it's telling you that the wind direction has changed. That in turn changes your map all around, but it also changes the weather forecast. So there's one person I was teaching a course to about 10 years ago who said, I can always tell when it's going to snow in winter because I smell the power station. And the power station was northeast of her home. And she was just saying that, when I get a northeasterly in winter, that means snow. So yeah, it's a lot of it is just putting two quite simple jigsaw pieces together and suddenly seeing a much more interesting picture.
That's quite interesting how two senses actually can connect, because I just watched a video you have on your blog about where you show that the direction of the wind is changing before the weather actually will change. So this is connects like those two, when wind is changing, which could be like the sense of you feel the wind, but at the same time, if there is a strong smell connected to it, you actually have two senses you can use to know something will happen, or even get your direction.
Absolutely, and a lot of my work is, what I notice is that in nature education, whether it's for adults or children, there's a little mistake almost everybody makes, to be honest, which is to point things out without giving the brain something to get excited about. So I see it the whole time is people will point to a wildflower and say, that flower is called X, Y, or Z. And it doesn't matter if you're 80 years old or 8 years old. It's quite hard to find that exciting. Whereas if you say to somebody, that flower there is pointing south. Most pretty flowers that we see as at all attractive, are trying to attract insects. They do that by reflecting light, and they do that best by opening south. So in mid-morning, you'll see flowers open typically between southeast and south. So coming back to the wind one, if you say to somebody, wind direction changes can forecast the weather, it's quite hard just that on its own sometimes. So if you sort of say to people, in the morning, just pick something that the clouds are coming from. If you're in a countryside area, it might be a hill in the distance. If you're in a town, you might pick a radio mast or a tall building, and you say that's where the clouds are coming from. Then in your lunch break, you say, I'm just gonna say which building are they coming over. And if there's a big difference between the morning, you then say to yourself, okay, I'm going to make a prediction. And then the brain starts to go, now you're playing my game. This, most animals are either faster, stronger, or have stronger senses than us. The one game we are brilliant at is pattern recognition and puzzle solving. We are just, our brains, we are not going to outrun half the species we see, and we're not going to outmuscle them, but we can actually solve these puzzles. But we have to give the brain enough to work with. If we just say to the brain, find that butterfly interesting, we won't.
Mhm.
But if you see a butterfly with its wings open, it is trying to absorb sunlight, which means it is facing the sun. We know the sun can be used as a compass. So if you see a butterfly with its wings open in
Yes.
the middle of the afternoon, you're probably looking northeast.
Thank you very much. We're kind of coming to the end of the podcast, unfortunately, because this topic is just so interesting. I'd have a couple of finishing questions. I think the first one is to get like a connection to all the people listening out there. Would you have a small task everybody can like follow next time he gets outdoors?
Yes, sure. I'll just give you a couple of very quick ones, just in case the first one doesn't work for someone. So the first one I would say is the next time you're standing outside and you reach for your smartphone, to check messages or emails or something else, just look up and say, which way am I looking? And let your surroundings give you the answer. Are you looking north, south, east, west? And it really doesn't matter if you're wrong. You just ask the question, and then it might be the sun, it might be the shape of a tree. There are over 20 ways we can navigate using trees. If you're in a place that like the back of your hand, so that's not a fun puzzle because you know the answer to it, just pick something at random and say, what's the clue? It might be ivy. Ivy can show you south. It might be the way somebody's walking, is telling you what the wind is doing. Just pick something and say, what is the clue in that? So either one of those you can have a lot of fun with every single day.
Thank you very much. Is there a specific reading tip you would give to our listeners?
Thank you. Well, as someone who makes their living as an author, you'll forgive me for mentioning my own books. I have a list on my website, naturalnavigator.com, of the books I've written. They've been translated into a few languages. It's different for each example. There's I've probably covered maybe 2,500 clues and signs in those books. So you can just kind of pick the one. Some people, I call it tribes. I don't mean like indigenous tribes. I mean like we all have different interests. So if you're interested in water, there's How to Read Water. If you're interested in walking, there's a book about those signs. If you're interested in, have an explore and pick, decide which, you'll know which tribe you're in, pick the one that matches that and let the fun journey begin.
Which I really can recommend. We have the books here in our office because for us in our work, it's just a new source of inspiration. So, and I will put the links in the show notes as well. So not only to your website, but to the books as well for people if they're interested in them. So
Thanks.
Usually my final question is always, when and about what have you thoroughly laughed lately?
My sons and I enjoy a sitcom. I don't know if it's popular where you are, but it's called Peep Show, and it's quite rude. And there's a scene in that where the stupid character is trying to trick the central heating boiler, and he says, "I'm going to put it up to 29 degrees," and his flatmate says, why are you doing that? And he says, well, it's cold, I want it to warm up quickly. And he says, but we don't want a 29 degrees. He says, yeah, but if you put it on 23 degrees, it thinks, oh, I've got forever. I'll just go very slowly to 23. Whereas if you put it on 29, it thinks, oh no, I need to get a hurry on, And so his friend says, what, you're trying to trick the boiler? Is that what you're trying to do here? And the three of us were laughing so much. I like all these comedies, you'll have to go and seek it out. It's better than I can do justice to, but that's, we love that. We love that show, but it is very rude. I'll warn you.
I really have to check it out. I haven't heard about it yet. Maybe it's a British show.
It's British made. It out. It's on. I think it's on Netflix here. I don't know if it is internationally or not, but it's quite fun.
I'll have to check. Great. Thank you very much, Tristan. My finishing words are, as always, if you have remarks, if you have questions, just let us know via our email address, which is podcast@geraumt.com. And Tristan, I'd say thank you very much. I know you have a busy schedule for giving us this time, talking about the clues in nature and how to basically get good stories just by walking outside. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me on, Christian, and happy navigating, everybody.